Let's talk about grooming, the predatory kind, because there is a woman out there who says that what happened to me was because I was giddy and I had a crush.
First thing I want to say is I do believe Rachel Lees is a victim, but not in the way she thinks she is. Later in this video, I'm going to talk directly to her, and if she's ready to listen enough to consider it, show her some information that could start the process of allowing her to see the steps that happened to her to cause her to be a victim, but not in the way she believes she is now. She wouldn't be the first of the plaintiffs to recognize there has been a major mistake made here. Redefining words is necessary for those who want to claim victimhood in this case and in many other cases of recent years, especially since the Me Too movement came to prominence starting around 2012. Potential victims, Me Too mentors, must frame the narrative in a certain way and need to redefine words in order to justify victimhood status and create a story that sounds credible. When this is done, it belittles real victims with real and credible stories, and it makes new victims of those who were not victims in reality. As I have explained in other videos on this channel, those who want to claim victimhood and are not really victims have to redefine words like victim, abuse, predator, cult, and etc. In the case of the failed Repressed Memories lawsuit filed against the Institute and Basic Life Principles and Bill Gothard, all these words had to be redefined in order to fit their narrative. Sometimes allegations had to be created or embellished for the same purpose.
Another side note, Lauren, what was so interesting is this was happening real time during the lawsuit as well of our understanding of terms. I mean, not just a few times, but several times, like I was processing real time what the lawyer was saying, what happened to you fit this category. And I was like, I just was having to wrap my head around putting a term with the true, because it'd always been blanketed with inappropriateness or mistake.
Grandfatherliness.
Yes, or defraud. And like there was no, there needed to be actual terms used, harassment. I don't know if I could say the R word on YouTube, but assault, sexual assault, these things happened and they had to be acknowledged that they were actual crimes. So I know that was part of the defense, throwing stuff back at me and splicing sentences in the sanctions, because in private messages, I was struggling to understand definitions that my attorney said, this is what your experience fits. And it just seemed hard to be, maybe often women who might call the peace, they might reject the term that they were actually abused. Like, this is domestic abuse. What you are experiencing is abuse. And that is just really hard to wrap your head around, something that you aren't allowed to have that truth for yourself.
This is similar to how the left now has had to redefine the words marriage, sex, gender, and human rights in order to advance their political and social agendas. One word commonly misused and redefined to fit the narrative in this particular case is the word cult. In fact, I laid out a very solid case about the definition of the word cult and showed the evidence that IBLP is not in that category, even though the supposed victims claim that IBLP is a cult. In the case of Rachel Lees and several of the other women involved, the word grooming had to be redefined in order to frame the narrative to fit what their therapists, lawyers, and others told them had happened to them. So let's look at how Rachel now defines grooming.
Here's what grooming actually looks like. You're young, conditioned to obey, especially by men in spiritual authority. You're taught that your worth lies in being good. Then someone older, someone powerful, tells you that you are special, gives you special attention. So when that dynamic crosses boundaries, it's confusing because it's not violent. It doesn't feel dangerous. It actually feels like love. Predatory grooming doesn't always look like abuse. That's what makes it so effective. It looks like admiration. It can look like spiritual mentorship, but then slowly it begins to cost you. It costs you your freedom, it costs you your confidence, it costs your voice, it costs you your safety. So no, I wasn't giddy. I was groomed, and I am naming it for what it was.
As you can see in this video clip, she takes the word grooming and defines it this way. Grooming is when someone who is in leadership makes you feel special and gives you attention. It doesn't look like abuse. It feels like love, admiration, and spiritual mentorship. This is how she is defining the word grooming. She doesn't ever say anything about what the groomer was leading up to. She doesn't include motive in her definition. But motive is a main part of the definition of grooming. Someone cannot accidentally groom someone else. They have to have a motive of sexual assault in order for that word to apply in the context in which she and the others are trying to use it. She also basically admits that she thought she was loved, that Mr. Gothard admired her, and that he was a spiritual mentor. So, what if that is true? What if he did love her as a dear friend, did admire her abilities? And what if he was being a spiritual mentor directing her thoughts towards God and His will in her life? Is all that now to be interpreted as grooming? According to her therapists, if Mr. Gothard did this, he had the intention of sexually assaulting her, at least according to the online dictionary definition of the word grooming. So let's look at the actual definition of grooming. The online dictionary defines it this way. This is the one her therapists and lawyers have suggested fits her situation. The action of attempting to form a relationship with a child or young person with the intention of sexually assaulting them or inducing them to commit an illegal act such as selling drugs or joining a terrorist organization. So Rachel would have to be suggesting that Bill Gothard was kind to her and gave her attention, which made her feel special, admired her skills, and talked to her about spiritual things, all with the intention of sexually assaulting her or inducing her to commit an illegal act. Let's look at the evidence in this case. From the correspondence she had with Mr. Gothard, only a small portion of which I showed in the last two videos, from the testimony of those who were there at the time and interacted with both her and Bill Gothard and worked and lived with each of them for the short time she was at the IBLP headquarters, it is clear that there was no intentional sexual grooming by Bill Gothard toward her whatsoever. In fact, she stated that clearly. Here is a direct quote from court documents in the failed repressed memories lawsuit. Rachel said, quote, "He, Gothard, hasn't done anything immoral like sexual abuse, as far as I'm aware," unquote. In addition to this, she would have to believe and expect everyone else to believe that Bill Gothard had the intention of sexually assaulting her and continued to groom her when she was more than 8,000 miles away, when she was engaged to be married, when he visited New Zealand to attend her wedding. Throughout the years, she had children, and while there was no possible way physical interaction could happen or was likely to ever happen, his behavior and kindness continued through all these years in the same way. He was the same from the time she met him right up until she started accusing him of sexual abuse. So was he still grooming her over all that time too? Grooming for what purpose? There is no evidence whatsoever that this was ever his intention, nor did he ever sexually assault her. So if he was grooming her, what was he leading up to? What intention did he have? And not only would he have had to be intentionally leading up to something, such as a sexual assault, if he was supposedly grooming her, it would also mean he was continuing to groom her over all these decades of time when she was nowhere near him at all. And yet, In all her correspondence over 2.5 decades, she never suggests or even hints that he did any such thing. She never writes it in her journals or any letters or other written documents in all that time. And she was a writer. Nor did she ever tell anyone, including her family, friends, or co-workers, that he ever tried to assault her or did anything with sexual intent in any way. As I already showed, she said clearly that he did not do anything like that as far as she was aware. Here's another excerpt from the court documents filed in the Failed Repressed Memories lawsuit regarding Rachel Lees and the idea that Gothard had intent, much less actions, that could constitute sexual abuse. Quote, "The reasonable evidence available to plaintiff, Rachel Lees, and her attorneys was that all of Bill Gothard's activities had nothing to do with sex, and there was no intent to engage in sexual contact itself. Plaintiff never had a reasonable belief that innocent touching amounted to a sexual battery or the more serious claims of intentional infliction of emotional distress or sexual abuse," unquote. So Rachel and the other plaintiffs, because of these and numerous other facts, have to use the redefinition of words like grooming, abuse, and victim to make their case. They also have to use the idea of repressed memories being true memories to claim abuse. I just saw an episode of 60 Minutes last Sunday where a woman was really and truly sexually assaulted. She believed for years that a certain man did it because she had been shown a picture of him by the police. They thought he was the guilty man, so they showed her a picture of him, and that placed a false memory in her head. She testified to his guilt in court. He was in prison for many years until the DNA evidence showed it wasn't him. She felt horribly guilty, but could not get that picture of this man assaulting her out of her memory. It was a false memory, but her knowledge of that didn't matter to her brain. She knew the evidence showed she was wrong, but the false memory had been planted, and now she couldn't get rid of it even though she knew it was false. She wanted to get that picture out of her mind and replace it with the right man, but she couldn't make her mind do it.
Because I think one of the things that's come up for me as I've talked with different people and talked with therapists and things like that is once you know,
Yes.
you can't unknow.
This kind of thing also happened to Meredith Moran, the author of My Lie, The True Story of False Memory, and to the Beatrice Six in a case made that caused several people to be convicted of rape and murder, who were all innocent, and to Eileen Franklin, and many, many more. One of the Beatrice Six was so convinced she killed someone that she could not get the memory of stabbing someone out of her mind, even though she never did it. After it was proven she was innocent, she was left with this false memory that she could not get rid of. These people were deceived into believing false narratives prompted by emotions, fear, and a feeling of betrayal, and by people around them telling them they were victims, or in the Beatrice Six case, that they were perpetrators. And all these circumstances culminated into a perfect storm. Then they did become victims of this storm, victims of false memory and of those around them with an agenda that didn't match justice. And eventually, when those who realized they had been deceived woke up and took a good look at the evidence, they felt guilty. And now I will speak directly to Rachel. I don't want you to end up feeling guilty. My hope for you is that you will put aside all the feelings and emotions that have been stirred up in you and look at the facts and the truth. Rachel, this is part of what has happened to you. You got angry over a false story that Bill Gothard wanted to marry you because you were told this by someone who was mistaken about the details. They corrected their mistake later, but that didn't matter by that time. There were several steps that caused you to come to the false conclusions you have come to and lead you into dark thoughts and feelings. And now you are in deep. Consider the possibility, just the possibility, that Bill Gothard actually did love you as a dear friend, that he did admire your abilities, and he did try to be a good and effective spiritual mentor. That is what you believed for decades, because that is what was true and what had been happening all that time. But then, when you got angry and some things in your life changed, you became influenced by those who wanted to take down IBLP and Gothard. Are you now willing to look at the evidence? Or will you double down on these false beliefs no matter what evidence is placed before you? Are you in too deep to come out of it? But, Rachel, one of these women will eventually be the first to speak out as more of them discover this, and possibly, through their conscience and the pressure of wanting to be honest, will be compelled to come forward and admit their mistake. Who will be the first one? There's already one plaintiff who knows, but has not come out publicly as of yet. But I believe someone will eventually. Even with the motto that was adopted by all of you, designed to keep you all in line and never wavering from the narrative that has been created here, Kia Kaha. The audience may not know what that's all about, but it will be brought out soon. Next time, I'm going to go through all the steps that happened to cause Rachel to be deceived, with evidence showing that she's not the only one this happened to. There are several women who were duped by an online campaign, therapists, lawyers, and the hope of making lots of money. A perfect storm. Thank you all for watching, and please remember to like, share, and comment below. I hope to see you here next time.